In our role in consulting, we work with a lot of organizations on obviously introducing AI into their customer experience operations. And what's clear is that the evolving technical landscape, leaders are starting to wrap their heads around that a lot more than ever has been in the past. But where organizations are still facing challenges, however, is in clearly articulating where AI is driving impact and how to effectively tell that story within the business. So, critical starting point is defining the core value dimensions you want to focus on. So, that gives a clear lens for measuring and shaping the narrative around AI performance. In practice, this then means evolving your metrics framework. And we've talked about this in the past, where it's shifting obviously through to tracking overall outcomes, but also introducing this concept or distinction around what is the differentiation between human performance and AI performance to better understand where value is being created. So there's many ways to approach this, but particularly for organizations early in their journey, I would typically recommend to keep things simple and focused, starting with a small number of clear outcome driven pillars. And the three that I'll introduce you today should help kind of drive that narrative internally. Now, as with anything, there's multiple ways to kind of cut this cake, but I think in terms of a starting point, particularly early on, these are pretty solid for a lot of organizations to kind of start to adopt. So the first pillar specifically being scale. Now, the general idea here is around expansion of service capacity and coverage without that increase in resource or headcount. So the value story here being that you are handling growth without hiring or the need to hire. So what does that change then look like, and how is AI now resolving a meaningful proportion of sort of your low complexity demand that is coming through, and how are agents adding additional value to the contacts that might be more higher in emotional cachet or that are higher urgency? What does that then look like from a human agent perspective? The value story there is around you're now available 24/7. So for those organizations that are historically Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, which a lot of SMB or mid-market organizations are, with the introduction, you're now managing a lot of contact outside of hours. And what does that demand reduction look like now? What do your backlogs look like now? So these are key things that you can then start to talk to the business about. So the metrics and the signals that you're kind of wanting to then keep across are things like your automation rates, your deflection rates. What does your ticket versus headcount growth now look like as well? So the other pillar here is specifically around efficiency, and that is then obviously talking about the reduction in time and effort and cost required to deliver the support that you're now providing. And the value story is around resolutions with Copilot. One of those key things around AI is that it's obviously not only customer focused, there's also an agent experience aspect of that. And that is when you're now introducing things like Agent Copilot. So what does that now look like in terms of agent managing the contacts that are coming through? How are they utilizing the tooling? What is the shift in quality metrics, which we'll kind of get to with the introduction of these efficiency? And then the other value story that is super critical that we talk to a lot of organizations specifically about as well is just around their cost of service. So by automating these repetitive tasks and streamlining your workflow, how have you reduced the cost to serve a customer? And what has that then meant for your service levels? So the metrics specifically that we're talking about here are not number one, but one of the key ones here is going to be your cost per ticket or your cost per serve. What does that then look like from an agent adoption rate from, say, a Copilot perspective? How has that then impacted their average handling time? How has that then impacted the first reply time? How quickly are now agents able to move through by being enabled with tooling at their hands? And how much less time is a customer waiting now that there are agents are in the loop, but it's more AI led now with the inquiries as they kind of come through. Now, from a quality perspective, you're obviously looking at that consistency aspect of it, that repeatability aspect of it, and what that then looks like from the overall customer experience, and how are you using that information to then drive improvements for customer outcomes. So the story you're being able to tell, or a couple of examples there, is just in return in terms of consistency and the trust in responses. What does that look like in terms of better outcomes for customers through CSAT, through first contact resolution? How many ticket touches is it now taking for a ticket to be resolved? General things like quality assurance score. If you're not doing quality right now, you should be considering that now that you're considering bringing in AI agents, particularly when you are giving these agents agency to pull information that you've got internally. It's obviously if the information is there and it's not serving up that information correctly, how are you checking that? How will you know that there's a problem other than being responsive to something going wrong? So this is where your key signals like your CSAT, these are your key signals like BSAT, introducing a bot satisfaction score, reviewing what your general QA scores look like, reviewing what ticket reopen rates will look like. That kind of then starts to build out a bit of a narrative in terms of the quality of the interactions that are being managed by the bot and how they then get managed in escalation through to an agent as well. There's a few other dimensions that you can look to consider. I'm not going to run through them all, but like you might want to expand out into sort of an understanding around insights and intelligence, sorry. So things like, how is the data that you're generating being driven into continuous improvement, or things that your operations can start to execute on? So general things like, if there are specific types of repeat contact, how has that repeat contact reduced? What does a customer effort score look like? What were the top contact drivers? Now, obviously, there's some seasonality and stuff in there as well, but how did they shift in terms of reduction specifically? What you're trying to do here is convey specific types of customer interactions that you're receiving, and how do you then divert them into things like actionable insights to drive actual change within your operations as well.